This person was blindsided when they found out that they lost their job, and we got on a phone call so that we could talk through what were some actions that they could immediately take in order to put themselves in a better financial position. Today I'm going to share with you 4 things that she put into practice straight away, and then one thing that she had worked on previously and ended up being a really important element of her financial success. So the first thing that we did is we created for her an emergency budget. In all fairness, this is something that I recommend people do well ahead of receiving any tragic news like losing a job or suffering the loss of a family member. Very often, whenever you experience a job loss, you will have grief that goes with that. Even if it's a job you hated, there is a type of identity crisis, and the loss of income can put you in a position where you feel some kind of way. Like, a lot of people grieve in different ways, and in the situation of a job loss, again, even if you hated the job, there might be some element of happiness and celebration, but there is very often another element of concern, fear, or grief. So whenever we are dealing with emotions, it's never in our best interest to make big financial decisions at that time. So I encourage you to do this step ahead of time, although we did it for this person straight away once we got the news. And that is to create that emergency budget, like I mentioned. So to create an emergency budget, you really need to figure out a couple things. The first thing is you need to know, of all of the ways you're spending money, what are true necessities? These are like your groceries, your utilities, your rent, your mortgage. Those are your genuine living expenses. I would also include in that car payments and anything that you spend for gas, because you will still need to be able to transport yourself from places to places when you are looking for a new job. Once you know what that is, you can also look at the remaining things that you spend money on. This would be entertainment, eating out, sports, and you want to decide what of these things are keepers and what are things that you have no problem ditching as soon as you're in emergency mode. When we make that decision ahead of time, it's so much easier because you're not trying to grapple with, where does all my money go every month? You have a plan in place. It's like, hey, I know I'm keeping Netflix, but I'm dropping Spotify, I'm dropping YouTube paid, I'm dropping Hulu. There are things that you can just immediately cut off of your budget. Making those decisions ahead of time helps you feel less like you're suffering a loss and more like you're just enacting a plan. So step number 1, have an emergency budget in place. The second really important thing that we have been working on is for her to discontinue putting her living expenses on her credit card. This is something that a lot of people do because A, there's better identity theft protection, it's easier to deal with fraudulent charges, and you don't have people taking your cash if a fraudulent charge does end up occurring on your debit card. So there are a lot of reasons, and not to mention rewards. So I totally get it. There's a lot of reasons why people do this. But when you have job insecurity, it can become a source of stress to realize you might not be able to afford to pay for the lifestyle that you have. And so blinding yourself to how much you're spending by just sticking it all on the credit card and then paying off the credit card every month, it makes it much harder for you to create your emergency budget, and it makes it a lot more challenging for you to have confidence when you are living on a finite amount of income. How long will your money last you? So it is really important for you to begin the transition. If you're very confident that you are going to lose your job, or if you just have a high expectation that you might lose your job in 2026, I strongly encourage you to move away from using your credit cards now and to getting into the habit of paying for cash. If you insist on having the credit card for identity theft protection, you should have a routine where you are logging into your bank every single week and paying those transactions off every single week. But you need to treat your credit card like it's an extension of your bank account, or do away with it entirely for the preparation of job loss. The next thing that I would encourage you to do is, if you are afraid that you'll be losing your job, become aware of what your state's unemployment practices are. Your unemployment might not, and very likely will not, replicate your corporate income. Every state has a max amount that they will offer for unemployment, and it is tied to how much money you made in the past. It is not going to be the full amount that you made previously, but it will be associated to that. So if you made $60,000 a year, you qualify for so much unemployment. If you made $80,000 a year, there's another bracket. If you make over 6 figures, you might get capped at a certain dollar amount. There are 2 types of cap for unemployment. One that is the amount of money that you will get every week, which is associated to what your salary was while you were employed. And then the second one is going to be the duration of time that you have the unemployment coming to you. Some states will work it on the number of weeks of unemployment that you're permitted to get, and other states will work it on a max dollar amount that you can receive. It's just very important to understand how much unemployment will you get, are you eligible for, and be aware that that will only come to you if you've been displaced. So in other words, if you've lost your job due to no fault of yourself. Unemployment insurance is paid by your employer. So if your employer argues that you lost your job because you were not performing at the level that they requested of you, then they do not have to pay you unemployment. And oftentimes they will fight that. However, if you are displaced, even if there was an element of poor performance included in the displacement, very frequently, the unemployment will not be contested. So it's my understanding that the process is that you submit your requests and your applications for unemployment. The unemployment office will verify with the employer. The employer will have an opportunity to contest the unemployment. I know that in both the situation of my friend who lost her job and in the situation when my husband lost his job, it expressly stated in their severance paperwork that unemployment would not be contested. Therefore, knowing what your state will pay you is really important, and you might have a great opportunity to take extra cash in while you're receiving severance. That being said, some states have a stipulation that you cannot receive unemployment while you're also getting severance. But this is a smooth segue into the next point. If you are afraid that you might lose your job in 2026, go into your team member handbook for the company you work for and understand what your severance packages will look like. Very frequently, severance is tied to the years of service that you have and then also your job position or salary. The company my husband worked for had specified that you would get 2 weeks of salary continuation for every 1 year of service that you were with the company, which thankfully for him, being with that company 20 some odd years, ended up resulting in quite a bit of salary continuation. However, that's not the case for every company. Some companies might only offer you 2 weeks or 4 weeks. You should be aware of what that is so that you are getting everything that's allotted to you. Like, you should get what you deserve. If that was part of the contractual agreement of employment, make sure that you're getting it and get it to the full. The second thing you should be aware of for salary continuation is that there might be other stipulations involved that could cause you to lose your severance or your salary continuation. For example, the company my husband worked for was very clear that he could not disparage the company in any way, that he could not resume working for the company in any capacity, which meant that he couldn't take subcontract work for another company that supported his company. And even for my friend who lost her job, there were some non-compete clauses. So just be aware that severance and the agreement to receive any salary continuation or severance funding might come with strings attached. Be very aware of what those strings are so that you do not forfeit that money. All right, guys, and this brings me to the final item on my list. And this is something that you cannot do right when you lose your job. You should be doing as a part of a sound financial practice, and that is to build an emergency fund. Emergency savings is very important. As you can imagine, it can be the difference between having to scramble and hustle and grind for a new job and taking something that you don't want in order to make ends meet versus having breathing room. In the situation of my husband, he received notice. Now, mind you, he did get salary continuation as well, but because we had fully funded emergency savings, when we received the notice that he would be losing his job, there was the shock and the dismay, but also there was the reassurance that we've got time to make decisions. And that is what an emergency savings account does for you. It offers you time so that you can respond to the circumstance and not react. I invite you guys to check out the freebies I have on my website. The link for my website is in the description box below, so check that out. I have one out there that can help you sort of get a framework and a foundation for many of the things that I talk about in my videos, including the emergency savings account. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've made it this far into the video, check out the videos that YouTube is recommending to you. I think that you'll enjoy that content as well. And please remember to subscribe. I'm growing this channel and I would greatly appreciate it.